Whitney Webb warned us about the shrinking space for dissent. Now it's front-page news. Just this week, top headlines tell a chilling story. Firings and suspensions after the Charlie Kirk shooting. A journalist claims she was ousted for her views, and universities are under federal pressure to hand over names. Freedom of speech is more than a principle. Right now, it's a battleground. Whitney Webb digs into how dissent and free speech are increasingly under threat. In this interview, she explains how governments and big tech work together to control narratives and limit what we can say.
I think in the US, they've done a much better job of that than in the UK, where, the Trump campaign created the perception they were going to be so radically different, not just from Biden, but from Trump's first term, right? In terms of transparency and all these major changes.
Can you give me just what are the top ones people should know about?
A lot of it will have to do with economics. A lot's going to have to do with energy. A lot's going to do with having to do with the border. We're going to immediately strengthen up the border and do a real job. And some of the basics.
They picked a lot of people who Trump's base trusted from, the years prior, like Dan Bongino, a podcaster who was like, release the files, being put in as a deputy FBI guy, and Kash Patel, release the files, being put in as head of the FBI. But then they turn around once they're in power and are like, trust us, there's nothing to see here. And I think they thought because those guys had cultivated so much trust with Trump's base, they would believe them, and that would be that.
It does feel like it will be washed over. I just get this sense now.
It depends on people, and if they are willing to let something like this go. But again, we're in a very unprecedented era of perception management, right? Where there are we've produced, by interacting with the digital world, the internet, we have produced tons of data on ourselves that have been sucked up by companies that use AI to analyze all of that and profile on us. And they know how to socially engineer things in ways now that I'm sure they wish they had decades before. And, where do people go to get their news? Well, it's on all these platforms that big tech, controls. And big tech, whether it's Google, whether it's Palantir, whether it's Microsoft or LinkedIn. I mean, Epstein was friends with all those executives. Amazon, Jeff Bezos and Ghislaine Maxwell were reportedly very, very cozy.
As Whitney Webb points out, that this crackdown on free speech isn't just about safety. It's also about controlling what the public can talk about and know. As she mentions, when governments and big tech define the boundaries of acceptable discussion, it threatens open debate and democracy. After conservative activist Charlie Kirk was assassinated, employees across major industries were fired or disciplined for online posts deemed inappropriate or offensive, especially those criticizing Kirk or his death. Companies and authorities actively searched for such speech, leading to dozens losing their jobs. The aftermath of Kirk's assassination rippled into the media world as the Washington Post fired columnist Karen Attiah for posts on gun control and race. Attiah said she was punished for refusing false mourning and speaking out on political violence and racial double standards. Her case has become a flashpoint in the debate over free speech in journalism. Webb's warnings about narrowing dissent echo in Attiah's firing, another instance where institutions move to silence voices challenging mainstream narratives, especially during high-profile controversies. Webb's analysis shows how speech that questions power structures is increasingly targeted, even within legacy media. Kirk's assassination rocked U.S. politics, reigniting debate about political violence, free speech, and what's considered acceptable discourse.
Democrats own what happened today. I am devastated. My kids have called panicking. All the kids of every conservative in the country call panicking. Just because you speak your mind on an issue doesn't mean you get shot.
Then, by that logic, do Republicans own the shooting of the two Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota? Isn't this on both sides?
Are you kidding me?
With regards to political violence, the conditions were set, unfortunately, before this incident for us to see more political violence. But this is not something. Let me back up. While I truly appreciate the comments that the governor of Utah has put out, and he has been a real mature voice during all of this. Unfortunately, this is not only a result of social media. That is certainly a contributing factor. It takes people down rabbit holes. It makes them isolated. And both of those things could be true with the path to mobilization to violence in this case. But it's more than that.
Some claim Kirk's own rhetoric contributed to the toxic environment. Others see him as a casualty of efforts to silence conservatives. In the aftermath, censorship and firings over online speech have increased, highlighting deepening divides over public debate. Webb's interview makes clear that these cycles of violence, censorship, and narrative control are not isolated. She describes a broader pattern where dissent is suppressed under the guise of safety or civility, and institutions move rapidly to police conversation in the wake of crisis. At UC Berkeley, the Trump administration requested a list of 160 students and faculty as part of a federal anti-Semitism probe. Many on the list don't know if they're accused or merely mentioned, creating anxiety and confusion. Critics argue this aggressive intervention could chill debate and academic inquiry. Webb points out how investigative crackdowns, often justified by public safety or anti-hate measures, are used to monitor and intimidate dissenting voices. The Berkeley situation illustrates Webb's warning that government and institutional power increasingly reach into universities and online spaces to control narratives and discourage open debate. As Whitney Webb says, organized crime shouldn't be running the world, but they are. Real change starts locally, with communities building independence and refusing to accept the status quo. Stay informed, keep asking questions, and don't let this story fade away.